Welcome to this dialogue with Rod Chambers. My name is Lee Mason and I'm the creator of Integral Flourishing Part 1 and Integral Flourishing Part 2, which are two online courses designed to help participants optimize their overall quality of life. The courses offer a combination of theoretical models related to human well-being and practical exercises to improve health and well-being. Rod has taken the Integral Flourishing courses as a participant and has also helped me to facilitate the first course for other participants. Rod, could you please give a short introduction for anyone watching?
Well, Lee, first, thank you for inviting me once again to come and join you for the conversations in this Integral Flourishing course. As Lee mentioned, I have been a student of the course as well as a facilitator. I'm currently working as a facilitator, so I look forward to furthering the discussions and the dialogue around the topics for today, as well as maybe in the future course facilitating some of you.
Excellent, thanks Rod. So today we'll be speaking indeed about the Integral Flourishing courses and specifically about the intelligences, which is one of the elements of the integral model. And in order to explore the intelligences, we'll first watch a clip from the Integral Flourishing Part 1 course about the intelligences, and afterwards we'll discuss the practical value of applying the intelligences in everyday life.
Howard Gardner, an American developmental psychologist and professor at Harvard University, who has dedicated decades of his life to researching and communicating his theory of so-called multiple intelligences. Indeed, years before I took my mental intelligence test in primary school, Howard Gardner had long been arguing that intelligence tests exclusively assess linguistic intelligence, logical mathematical intelligence, and some aspects of spatial intelligence, but fail to assess many other human capabilities. In his 1983 book, Frames of Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligences, Gardner proposed a more inclusive and therefore more integral definition of intelligence, namely the ability to solve problems or to create products that are valued within one or more cultural settings. Interestingly, Gardner's definition of intelligence refers either directly or indirectly to all four of integral theory's quadrants. So, solving problems is related to practical behavior in the upper right individual exterior it dimension. The creation of products is related to structures, systems and processes in the lower right collective exterior its dimension. The cultural value of problem solving and product creation is related to shared views in the lower left collective interior we dimension. And the abilities or intelligences themselves, which we draw upon to solve problems and create products of value to others, are inner potentials related to the upper left individual interior I dimension. One of the consequences of Gardner's definition is that suddenly, as human beings, we can now be intelligent in more ways than just mentally. According to Gardner, each of us possesses all of the intelligences available to human beings, only at varying levels of development. In other words, each of us is intelligent in some ways and less intelligent in other ways. Our 8 intelligences for this course are related in the following way to the domains of experience and the quadrants. The domains of experience refer to physical intelligence, emotional intelligence, mental intelligence, and existential or spiritual intelligence, whereas the 4 quadrants refer to self-intelligence, creative intelligence, moral intelligence, and environmental intelligence. To clarify, our 8 intelligences are not located within the domains of experience and the quadrants. Rather, our 8 intelligences are talents in the I dimension, which can be trained and developed as behavioral skills and abilities in the it dimension, within a particular cultural context in the we dimension, and amidst certain social circumstances in the its dimension. So think of the placement of our 8 intelligences within the domains of experience and the quadrants as thematic. This means that we've situated physical intelligence within the physical domain of experience because this domain is the primary focus of physical intelligence. We've situated emotional intelligence within the emotional domain of experience because this domain is the primary focus of emotional intelligence. We've situated mental intelligence within the mental domain of experience because this domain is the primary focus of mental intelligence, and we've situated existential intelligence within the existential domain of experience because this domain is the primary focus of existential intelligence. Additionally, we've situated self-intelligence within the upper left quadrant because the I dimension of our personality and experiences is the primary focus of self-intelligence. We've situated creative intelligence within the upper right quadrant because individual human creativity is expressed through innovative behavior in the it dimension. We've situated moral intelligence within the lower left quadrant because moral intelligence focuses strongly on questions of how human beings should relate to each other within the we dimension. And we've situated environmental intelligence within the lower right quadrant because environmental intelligence focuses strongly on the its dimension of ecosystems and human societies.
So that was a clip from the Integral Flourishing Part 1 course related to intelligences, which is one of the elements of integral theory. So Rod, shall you and I share examples of these 8 intelligences from our own lives?
Yes, please.
Can I ask you to begin with physical intelligence, please?
Yes. One of the examples that comes to mind for me is during my collegiate years, I was a scholar American football athlete for 5 years. And so that's one of the examples that comes to me in terms of physical intelligence. How about you?
Nice. Well, for me, I once, and this was when I was, I think about 21, I think 21, I achieved a black belt in jiu-jitsu. And so that was after many years, of course, of intense practice. So those are ways indeed in which you and I are skilled at using our body to solve particular problems or to execute particular activity patterns. So those are good examples indeed of physical intelligence. And emotional intelligence for you?
A few different examples comes up for me. I used to work in an industry where it was a mentoring program. And so I was constantly around at least 300 different students a year. And so gauging where students were throughout the semester, college semester, I think was really important because stress levels would be really high depending on the semester. And so knowing when to connect with students and when to show a little more TLC or tender love and care for students became a critical skill, I think, for most staff, to know when students were perhaps going through different periods of the semester that could cause for them to either drop out or further their education throughout the semester. So being discerning on where students were in terms of their stress levels was a skill set that I had to develop.
Nice.
How about you?
For me, emotional intelligence, one example is I occasionally facilitate relationship coaching. So I will have a couple and then we will work through particular issues that are arising within that relationship. And one of the things that I noticed that I do within the context of emotional intelligence, which of course is both experiencing your own emotions and registering the emotions of other people, is that if we're doing an exercise and the couple in question are, if something becomes emotionally unpleasant for me, because for instance, one of the partners is being dismissive towards the other, or is, or there's some kind of unconstructive behavior occurring between the two, then I will feel that within my own emotional experience, and then I will be able to communicate that back to the couple so that they can step back and analyze whether that was their intention to create emotional distress in the other person. And typically, of course, that's never the intention. So then the invitation from me to them is to re-engage and to see if they can navigate the same terrain, the same conversation or the same exercise that we were doing without harming the other person emotionally, so to speak. So that for me would be an example of how I use emotional intelligence also in the work I do.
Nice, nice.
And mental intelligence for you, Ron?
Living among a people that I had no reference to their language before moving to that country, but then having to pick up the language within a few years to live became an important skill for me. So anything with linguistics, with writing, seems to be a strength for me as it relates to the mental intelligence.
Nice. And to make it more concrete for people, one of the things, at least that I know that you're referring to, is that your ability to speak Chinese, Mandarin Chinese.
Yes.
I also, I can speak a very small amount of Mandarin Chinese, but I'm also, I'm fluent in Dutch also, because I moved to the Netherlands when I was 9 and learned to speak Dutch from that age. So that for me is also an expression of mental intelligence. And so reading and writing and language proficiency indeed is also strong with me. So moving from mental intelligence to existential intelligence, which we could of course say is the ability to make sense of the world and to live according to our principles and our ideals and values. What would you say is an expression for you personally of existential intelligence in your life?
I think that existential and perhaps environmental intelligence may merge together with me, because I find just as much existential connection in the environment as I do, let's say, within a building or having conversations with people focused around spirituality, or sitting among a group of maybe a leader or a group or what have you. So those would be my two primary examples that come up: my perhaps Christian background, as well as my ability to connect with the natural world around me, and to see just as much existential or spiritual connection in both of those domains, or examples rather.
So for me, existential intelligence shows up, for instance, in the way that I experience reality as a meaningful phenomenon. So from my perspective, I tend to see reality as, for instance, material reality as an expression of the Big Bang, which is a singularity in which all matter is condensed infinitely into an infinitely small space, and then basically explodes into everything that is matter in the universe we inhabit up until now. And to see that in that way, everything is from the same origin. And I tend to view the non-material world, so the interiors that we all share, the thought processes, beliefs, and things like that, I also tend to view all of that aspect of reality as connected intricately, and the two, so the material and the non-material world, also as intricately connected and an expression of the same reality. Can you speak to the self-intelligence within your own life, how that practically manifests itself?
For sure. I think COVID-19 has created a shift in many of people's lives. Lee, as you know, I was completing my massage therapy program, and had some ideas about becoming a massage therapy. I did finish. I'm still waiting on being able to schedule a test and become licensed. But this has created a huge space for me where I've been having to really reconsider what my path is moving forward. And so thinking about self-intelligence I think is invaluable, because you have to go back to a core of some of those Socratic questions that we often come to. You know, who am I? What am I here? You know, who am I at this time of my life? And being able to question the things that we identify with, whether that is a career, whether that is our degrees, whether that's our ethnic or cultural backgrounds. All these things are being questioned right now for me. And though that there are certain things that I don't spend a lot of time in, definitely as it pertains to my career moving forward, it has been a huge question about what am I going to do to fit my basic needs, to generate revenue for one, and then to select a career path that I will feel safe participating in, as well as that I feel that it's going to be relevant to continuing to build my career. And I don't know where I am with making a decision, but being self-aware and having some sense of who I am in the midst of all of the chaos and who I am beyond a career, I think this particular domain I'm finding very relevant during this time and very important. So that's my example. Hopefully that made sense.
Absolutely. And I think that's because self-intelligence, we could say, is the ability to know yourself and to shape your life in accordance with your most essential self. So it's about self-management, self-insight. And indeed, I would also add to that one of the things you've shared with me that you've done over the last couple of weeks has been, of course, to undergo a fast and to become even more clear and focused about what your current experience of self is and what that means indeed for the next steps you'll take in your personal life.
Indeed.
So for me personally, an expression of self-intelligence could be that I'm typically very aware of the thoughts and emotions and beliefs and physical sensations that are arising within my individual experience. So a very trivial example, for instance, is that I have a recording stand on which the camera is screwed, with which I'm recording this this dialogue, and on the stand it reads Hercules, and there's a song by Aaron Neville called Hercules, and it's a very nice song. If you haven't listened to it, absolutely listen to it. So what recently happened was I bought this stand, and then throughout the day I was humming Hercules to myself, the melody from the song, and I thought, how come I've suddenly started singing that song? And then I sort of traced back my thoughts, and then in my mind I could see, oh, this Hercules is on that microphone stand or on that camera stand. So that's a way in which I'm able, within my own awareness, to sort of determine where stuff came from. And that sometimes that can be really useful, for instance, when dealing with friends or intimate partners, where you sometimes get into difficult dialogues or difficult discussions, and then to see, okay, so how did I arrive at that point within the discussion where I perhaps said something that I perhaps rather wouldn't have said? Then I can go back and see, okay, so I got, for instance, I got a little bit reactive in response to what the person was saying. And then the next time I interact around that same subject or issue, I can take a different path because I've been able to go back and see where I would like to make different choices in the future.
I think that, yes, I really like that example.
So moving on to creative intelligence, are there any examples from your own life where you exhibit this?
Sure. I'll actually connect the last self-intelligence with the creative intelligence. As I've talked about the current changes that are happening within our global economy, as well as the United States national economy, that given a lot of the shifts in energy itself, I've been able to translate some of my creative juices into music, as I've been able to write one song in particular. I've done a few different songs in the last couple of weeks, but one song in particular that has allowed me to focus social justice issues into lyrics. And so that would be an example that I would use for the creative intelligence.
Okay. Is that something you can already share?
It's going through the copyright issues, but I will definitely share the song when things are processed.
Please do, please do. Well, and as you know, for me, creative intelligence could also apply to creating music.
Yes,
As
yes,
I've,
yes.
yeah, I've created a number of albums indeed. So, yeah. Moving from the creative intelligence to the moral intelligence, what for you personally is an expression of your moral intelligence in daily life?
When we think about the quote unquote golden rules or golden rule, treat others as you would like to be treated, I think is very, very important every day. And it's always in season to treat people with respect. But I'm going to drive an example home with really showing self-appreciation and how important that is. As we are recording these videos, I've realized the more that I struggle with being able to even talk about my own accomplishments. And I am having to confront that in a visceral kind of way and in a very live kind of way as we're doing the recordings to really pull back the layers of why that is. And I think that perhaps with a very premature investigation, for lack of a better word, I think that part of that has to deal with the insecurities of allowing, I guess, what I've achieved and who I am to be vocalized, to be represented. And so I think that will have an impact in the way that if someone is watching the video and they have the same issues, I think it does have a way of impacting you in a negative way when you are showing up in larger groups. Because if you're not seeing yourself as a valuable, perhaps asset, or if you don't like the example because it's too close to associate yourself with the merchandise, but if you don't see yourself as having some self-worth, I think that it could make maybe in a very small kind of way or a big kind of way, the way you show up for other people and the way that you value other people's contributions and the way that you value others sharing their achievements and their accomplishments. So I want to use that example to deal with the moral intelligence aspect.
Okay, so what you're indeed saying, interestingly, is that it's a moral imperative to show up as truthfully at the deepest level of ourselves when we engage with other human beings or when we engage with life in general.
Indeed. If you can't show respect to yourselves and you can't really honor yourself, it's probably going to be very difficult to translate that treating someone else with the same value and the same respect. In some way, in some fashion, there's going to be a shortage of that when you have not taken that time to cultivate those parts of yourself. So.
Good point. That is a very good point indeed. For me personally, moral intelligence shows up in my life when playing sports, for instance. So I used to play football, indoor football, and very often, if the ball was kicked against my hand, then of course it's a handsball, and you have to sort of stop the game, and then the other side they get the ball. And that often happened when nobody else had seen it, and just me and the person who kicked the ball against my hand. And so I would then say, oh, I made a handsball. And then my teammates would say, well, you didn't have to say, let them call for it. But to me, that was just immoral. So I thought, well, it's happened. It's reality. It's true. So I'll own up to it. And that occasionally irritated my my teammates. So.
Oh, quite naturally, man. Quite naturally.
Yeah.
You know, and I have to point out something. I want to nuance this a little bit just because I think it's comical and I can. You know, when I said football, I had to say American football. But when you said football, you just said football. You didn't say Netherlands football. What's up with this, man?
I think, but the strange thing is, American football is actually foot and handball, because you can carry it.
Well, and it's primarily carried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that American football should be called arm or hand and football, and other football. Okay, I could have said soccer indeed. So a good point. So indoor soccer. Yeah. Okay, well, excellent. So moving on to environmental intelligence, the last one. So you already alluded to environmental intelligence when you were speaking about existential intelligence, that you feel connected to natural environments when you're out walking, for instance. Are there any other ways that environmental intelligence shows up for you in your daily life?
I mean, just the need to, something simple, just open my windows and use natural lighting, or to open my blinds rather, to use natural lighting and be intentional about going outside periodically throughout the day, assuming that the weather permits, just to get the natural therapy of just being in a natural environment. So as you mentioned, besides my can be very long and extended walks, to just be in nature and to be in trees, something very simple as just popping open the shades and allowing sunshine to come through is very important for me.
Oh, that's nice, Rod. And for me personally, environmental intelligence shows up in my daily life. I reuse plastic bags, and we separate here in the Netherlands. We separate some of our trash so that, for instance, glass and cardboard and things like that are separated, so they can be processed differently. And occasionally I bring all of my batteries to some place where they get recycled specifically. Like you, I also enjoy, of course, being in nature and feeling unity with the natural world as being an expression of the natural world. Well, excellent, Rod. So these were the intelligences, the 8 intelligences, and of course the intelligence is one of the elements of integral theory that we discuss during the Integral Flourishing online courses. And we've gone through all 8 of them, so the physical, emotional, mental, existential intelligence, and the self-intelligence, creative intelligence, moral intelligence, and environmental intelligence. So thanks everyone for watching. And Rod, thanks so much for sharing your perspectives.
Absolutely, man. It's my pleasure.
Excellent. So see you on the next call, and have a lovely day.